Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. Today I thought I would make some decorations for the cover of my butterfly travel journal. It's more than just a travel journal, it's also a gratitude journal. And just a memory journal, because what I have planned is to create a spread for each of my meetups, and I've gone on a couple that I want to get started working on. But before I do that, I want to create some artwork for the cover of my journal. So I've pulled out my old Butterfly Brilliance stamp and die set, because this is the deluxe version, and I have my case here. This is a sample of some of the painting that you can do using this big oversized stamp. And inside here I also have some leftover pieces, and I even have tucked in here something that I didn't finish, so I thought I'd finish that today. And I also wanted to share with you a tip that is, when you get your Fluid 100 watercolor paper, it comes in this handy 5x7 pack. Did you know that you can reuse the packaging? So I'm going to use the paper that was used like so, and I'm just going to cut this down, and I'm going to use this as a background for my butterflies. So for that, I'm just going to grab my trimmer and I'm going to put this right at 5 inches. Trim that away. Now this piece makes a handy tag or a bookmark, so I'm going to save that, but I'm going to remove that little folded area because that I don't need. And I'll just tuck this away with my collection of those leftover pieces of packaging, because this is great to use. Now you may have a little bit, I don't know if you'll see, but you may have a little bit of a score left on there. Just grab your bone folder and burnish that down. It doesn't have to be perfect, and actually I think I'm probably going to stitch this onto a piece of cardstock when I'm done. I'm going to sponge the edges and stitch it down. And so that edge isn't going to be that noticeable, but the bone folder did a pretty good job of getting that down. All right, so let's start with the background. I have my watercolors here, red, yellow, and blue, and I'm going to grab a brush. So let's see what I have handy here. I have these brushes. I took my paint kit with me during the plein air event this weekend, and all my things unfortunately are still in the car. So I'm going to just make do with what I have here in front of me. I'm going to get my glass palette out because I'm going to wet this. I'm going to work wet and wet. I'm going to begin by giving the back of the paper a good spritz. And what I have in mind is kind of a loose, sort of a landscape with a lot of sky, maybe some clouds. And so for that, I'm simply going to just apply the paint and let it move across the surface. And I could even use, let's see, I have my water painters here, so I'll get those out. The water painters are the brushes that have the reservoir in the handle. Okay, so that makes it very easy and convenient if you're on the go. I'm going to use this big brush. And because my palette is a little too dirty for sky colors, I'm going to clear a little area around my blue. Okay, we're ready to get started. I'm just going to take pure blue and just brush that across the top. I'm making sure to get to the edges. This is going to go very quickly. And what I'm looking for is a gradation, so I'm going to make it a little bit darker at the top. And I'm going to bring it down. It's just a simple wash. And as I get closer to the bottom, I'm going to add some more color. So I'm going to take a little bit of my red. And remember, this is just going to be an abstraction, so it's just going to sort of disappear behind everything else. And then finally, I'll put some green, just like so. It doesn't have to be fancy. Alright, so there's my basic wash. Now what I'm going to do, since this is still damp, I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm just going to lift out a little of the excess paint. And this will just help to dry it a little bit quicker. Alright, so that's it for my background. I'm going to put this aside to dry. I'm going to get out my unfinished butterfly painting here. Now this is also on a piece of the Fluid 100 watercolor paper, which is 140-pound paper, and that means that it's nice and sturdy. And I'm going to be cutting these butterflies out with the die, and I'll be able to bend those wings up so that I have a 3D effect. So I want the paper to be fairly sturdy, and this is going to work perfectly. I'm just checking my screen here. I want to make sure you can see me. And I don't see. There it is. Okay, I've got it now. All right, that looks fine. So, using my previous painting as a guide, I'm going to look at what I did in the past. And of course, you can go on to the internet and find all different types of butterflies for inspiration. I want to have a nice kind of assortment of colors. The butterflies do not necessarily have to be realistic. So I can embellish them a little bit depending on how they're all coming along. Now, one of the things I do want to do is, because my background is a cool kind of a sky blue landscape background, I want my butterflies to have a little more of the reds, yellows, and oranges in them. I'm just painting a light wash. The inks that I used when stamping the butterfly are water-based inks, and so they will soften and melt a little bit into the wash that I'm laying down, and they're going to help to give it a little more of a natural effect. I also stamped off, meaning that I didn't go full strength with the ink on the butterflies. I stamped on a piece of scrap paper first after inking my stamp to remove excess ink, and that way I had a softer edge, which is what I'm looking for here. I don't want it to have a harsh outline. I'm just going around the edges and making it a little bit darker, adding a slightly darker wash of pigment. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Now I'll let that one dry a little bit, and while that one's drying, I'll come down to the next one. I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm just taking a very pale watery mixture and flooding the area. And if you don't have this stamp set and die bundle, no worries. There are all sorts of other stamps and dies that are available, and you may even have some butterfly punches in your collection that will work perfectly well. And if you don't have any of those things, I'll show you how you can make a butterfly from scratch very easily. So when I'm creating these washes on these butterflies, I'm mixing two colors together. So here I mixed my yellow and my red. Here's some red and some blue. And I'm encouraging the colors to separate a little bit. It doesn't have to be one flat color. In fact, having the variations help to give it more of a pleasing effect. I'm going to also go around the edges, a little darker again. And I'm just slowly building up my tonalities so that I have a nice mix of medium and light tones. Alright, now let's get this one down here. I'm going to let this one be a little more on the yellow side. So mixing a little more of the yellow here. Just pull that right across. And then finally over here, got a kind of a pinkish color. Okay, now I'm going to go back to this one. This is pretty well dry, and I'm going to mix up a kind of a reddish brown mixture. So for that, I'm just putting all of the colors together. So here's my red, it's a little of the blue mixed in, and if I add yellow to that, I can start to get a nice brown. I'm looking for a nice warm brown. And now using the tip of the brush, I can start to accentuate some of the markings. Add some additional color to the body. And you can spend as much time or as little time as you like. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just enough to get it started. And I'm just picking out some of the segments on the wings that are characteristic of this particular butterfly, just following the guidelines from the stamp, and maybe a little shadow between the wings. So we've got the upper wings, or the top wings, creating a little bit of a cast shadow on the wing underneath there. And then I'm just going to soften that and let that fade into the lighter area. Now, another thing that you can do with your butterfly, and I'll zoom in for this, is you can glaze another color over the top. So I'm taking a pale wash of yellow, and if I just, so this is just yellow on the brush here, and if I just bring that right over the top, and I'll just do it on one side at first so that you can see the difference, I can increase the vibrancy of the color of the butterfly, as well as add to the value. Okay, so if your paintings are looking a little bit washed out, like as you can see on this side, you might want to try glazing. And the key to glazing is to make sure that you let the area that you're working on completely dry before you go over it. But this is one of the beautiful things about using transparent watercolor, is that you can create these beautiful kind of cellophane effects of color that allow you to see down through what you had previously painted. Now I'm going back into that darker color, and I'm just going to add a little more value. Okay, now I can let that dry, and if I want to come back to that later, once it's dry, I can do all of the same over again. So let's work on this little violet butterfly. Mixing up a slightly darker violet, and I'm just going to increase the shadow on the inside, like so. Soften that edge. The underpainting is completely dry now, so I'm not worried about lifting any of the paint that's underneath there. My wings. And a little bit more on the outer edge. Going back in with a clean brush, just a little bit of water to help blend that. And then maybe a couple of these details. Okay, and that butterfly is pretty much ready to go. I'll just do this one down in the corner, and then I'm going to move on to the next step, which is going to be adding a little bit of shimmer. So I've got a question here. It looks like Sherry's here. Hi, Sherry. She asks if I'm using Stampin' Up's refill bottles, or is it a watercolor pad? I think she means watercolor paint. I am using watercolors right now, but Sherry, you could certainly use the Stampin' Up reinkers that are the water-based inks and do a very similar technique. And I've done that many times before. So if you don't have watercolors, you can certainly go ahead and get a nice effect by doing just that. The watercolor pencils may also be something that you prefer to use if you have those to hand. Right now I'm just increasing the color in the center here where the body is. Now this one's very wet right now, so I'm getting a very soft, diffused stroke when I put the brush down. So I'm not going to go too far on this one. I'm just going to add a little bit more. It's a little bit drier on this side. And give that a chance to dry. All right, so once you're happy with your butterflies, and I would probably work on all of these a little bit more, but when you get them to a place that you are happy with them, then what you can do is you can grab your shimmer spray. Let me get a bottle that's full here, because that one I just picked up is empty. So I like this brand. This is by Imagine. It says Sheer Shimmer Crafts Spray, and it's the sparkle color. Just give that a good shake. And I'm going to get a scrap piece of paper here. Give it a good shake. And then spritz it. And it recommends on the bottle that you spray 8 to 12 inches over the project and to allow the mist to gently settle. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm putting on plenty because I want these to be really sparkly. And you can see it's quite saturated. All right, but all that shine that you see on there is going to dry into a beautiful kind of a subtle sparkle. So it's not overly sparkly. It's just sort of a subtle sheen, and I like that very much. So now these need to be put aside so that they can dry. And my other, my background paper is still quite saturated, so I'm going to leave. I'm not going to bother it too much. Just clean up some of the excess moisture. Give that a chance to dry. And once everything is ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and cut out my butterflies, and then I'm going to arrange them on the background in a way that I like. And then this is going to become the cover to my butterfly meetup journal. And I will show you how that looks tomorrow when you come back for paper crafting Saturday. I'm sorry, paper crafting Thursday. Tomorrow is Thursday. To get a look and see what the upcoming journal is going to be looking like. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope I gave you some ideas. I hope you'll come back and see the finished result. Stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.